name is Melissa Jeter, Librarian Specialist for the Art Tatum African American Resource Center, located in the Kent branch of the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library. Welcome to the Art Tatum African American Resource Center's Oral History Project, the Edrene Cole Collection. Dr. Edrene Cole was a local African American historian and educator who began collecting the stories of noteworthy Toledoans in the African American community. With this oral history project, the Art Tatum African American Resource Center honors her memory and her work. Join me and University of Toledo Professor of Anthropology, Dr. Willie McCathar, as Toledo's very own African Americans share the stories of their lives.
In this segment, we're pleased to welcome Dr. Lillian Ashcraft-Eason. Dr. Eason currently serves as a professor of history at Bowling Green State University and is an initiator and former director of the university's Africana Studies program. Dr. Eason, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Eason, I want to talk with you about your relationship with Edrene Cole and the project she had taken before she passed away. But before doing so, talk a little bit about what brought you to Toledo originally.
Okay. I came to Toledo because my husband wanted to study for the PhD in American Culture Studies. Okay. I had been chair of the Department of Religion and Philosophy at Clark Atlanta University and taught some courses also at Spelman College. Okay. And so when he graduated from ITC, the Interdenominational Theological Center, with his master's degree in religion, he was approached regarding his interest in going on to study for the PhD. And so when I found that this was a possibility for him, I contacted the history department at Bowling Green State University to inquire about their interest in hiring me as a faculty member. Certainly. And fortunately, they did, and I was able to accompany him. That's how I got to be at Bowling Green State University. And we had opportunities that were absolutely unusual and rare for a couple in a university. And so this encouraged us to want to continue to be at Bowling Green. And as a result, we continued to be there until he died. And so he left me here, and it's a good spot for me.
Okay, okay. Now, with your husband, what kind of courses did he teach, and what was his relationship specifically to the university? My
husband taught culture studies courses. He was an adjunct professor, but he also had a position as the director of ethnic cultural arts program at Bowling Green. And so he taught sometimes for the ethnic studies department, and he taught in his specialized field of African religion. Okay. He taught African religions for American Culture Studies and for Africana Studies.
Okay, great, great.
But his primary responsibility was to coordinate African cultural arts between Bowling Green State University and public schools in the area.
Okay, okay, good, good. Let me switch back to you just a little bit. What kinds of projects are you currently working on?
I continue to work with a program which he and I established, the Benin Seminar, which takes students to the Republic of Benin and Togo and Ghana to study the traditional cultures there in the summer for, about a month. And because of that French connection with, because Benin was a colony of France, and Benin and Togo, and we study a lot of the art and culture there. We end our studies in Benin, or the Benin seminar, by going to Paris to study art there, African art, the Beninois art, mainly there, for about 5 days. So I continue with that project, and I continue to support the Africana Studies program, and I have my own professional research interests. Currently, I am completing a book-length manuscript on African women and religion in the British colonial, in the British colonies. British American, North American colonies. And I am in the process of completing, and we've submitted the manuscript for a 6-volume series on women and religions of the world. And so that's what I'm doing.
What's enough? It sounds as if, again, you're keeping yourself quite busy. Okay, but I want to shift gears now here a little bit and talk about your relationship with Edrene Cole. I know that you were one of the last persons to work with Mrs. Cole in documenting the history and migration of African Americans here in Toledo. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship, why she started that project, and specifically your role in that project as well?
I had known Edrene as a member of the community a bit. We were on a television program together, and whenever we saw each other, we were able to gladly embrace and so on. But I didn't know her as a colleague or a friend on any kind of continuing basis until Robert Smith, who is the director of the African American Legacy Program here in Toledo, began trying to pull people together to work with this program. And so he had invited me to work with him, and then we were trying to involve more people and decided, recognized that Edrene was locally known as historian in Toledo, and that she had to be a vital part of any kind of historical study of Toledo. So he decided that he wanted to bring the two of us together and asked me if I would meet him at her home so that we could begin talking about whether or not she would be available to work with the project. And so we met there, and then she became, she and I began to really work together on trying to pull together a research component for his program on Toledo.
Certainly.
And we, at some point, she, my husband, Dr. Al-Kalimat, Dr. Wilson, who's in economics at UT, and a number of other people met in my home to begin talking about how we could collaborate on putting this project together. And I mean, it was going to be a project in which we intended to engage the entire community. We knew that it was going to be a multi-year program, and we knew that it was going to have a number of different disciplines associated with it, and that it would require specialists in different fields. And so we also went to talk with Representative Marcy Captor, because we knew that we were going to need major funding for the project, and she was very interested in what we were doing. Well, it seems that, and we invited Robert Smith to go with us. Actually, I was supposed to be spearheading this project, and so along with Cheryl is a dynamic brilliant young woman who has extraordinary energy and was going to be one of the focal major persons in this project. And she is the one who got the appointment for us with Marcy Kaptur.
Okay.
And we invited Robert Smith. I think it was just the three of us who went to talk with her. And after we had the meeting in my home, and after we had that meeting with Marcy Kaptur, we were all so excited and really geared up to begin our work with the program. And at that point, Robert Smith fired us from his project.
Okay.
He decided that for whatever reason, he didn't want it to continue as it then was. And so Edrene said to me, Lillian, we can continue to work on the history project. And she invited me to work with her on what she called the second round of the bases on her research. That is, she had talked with a number of people in the prior generation and had pulled together a resource book for teachers in the Toledo Public Schools.
Right.
Having interviewed them, that generation of people, and recorded their histories and so on as this resource project. So she said for a long time, wondered how she could follow up by talking with their children. And so she said, you come and support me in doing that. And so I agreed that I would, and Jasovi agreed that he would be the videographer for her. Now, this meant that we knew that we were switching gears completely, and that we were no longer doing the kind of extensive and intensive history project that we had initially planned to do.
Okay.
And actually, my role became one of supporting her in what she wanted to do. By this time, we knew that she had pancreatic cancer. And so I was not, my role was not one of trying to reformulate what she was doing or to try to redirect it. It was only one of supporting her and being with her physically in person as she went from place to place, talking with people, and Jasovi gave the service of videotaping what she was doing.
Okay.
And so that's how that project came about, and that's how we conducted it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that she passed away before the project was complete, of course.
Well, no, excuse me. When Jasovi died, the project ended.
Okay.
We no longer had a videographer. We had a number of appointments scheduled, and we had plans for her continuing to interview people and continuing on with the project, but his death terminated.
Okay. So then clearly, though, he played a vital role in this entire project.
As the videographer.
As
yes,
a videographer.
Absolutely.
As a videographer.
Yes.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
What I say is, she was the person who conceived the idea and conducted the interviews, and he was the other half in providing the videography for her.
Sure.
Yes.
And she had such a unique style. And I think in part because having watched the interviews she conducted, she knew many of these people, so that it made it so natural and so easy for her to do them.
Well, not only did she know them, see, she had known their parents.
That's right.
And so she had I think of her as a prominent socialite and educator in Toledo. And so she had entree into many homes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And personal relationships with many of these people going back decades.
Sure, sure. You know, Dr. Eason, unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to meet Mrs. Cole. What kind of person was she from in your viewpoint?
I had the opportunity to meet one of her professors at UT. And one of the things he said to me when he came to her funeral was, every time you saw Edrene, she was perfectly coiffed and dressed. And she would have never thought of coming onto a set dressed in the casual manner in which I am. And of course, that's something that I'll always hold against you, Willie, for not telling me how to dress.
There goes my life.
For this, but in her presence was very professional.
Certainly.
But also engaging and down to earth.
Sure.
She was a premier principal and also an advocate for teachers citywide. She also was mentor to many of the teachers and other professionals in the city. She told me about a number of people whom she supported in various ways, and as a result, or mentored, and as a result, we were able to contact them and have them present for various interviews.
Okay, okay.
She was a very bright woman with high energy. She had many interests, not only her professional interests as an educator, but also her social interests. She did a lot of social welfare work for the city in the area, and also she was engaged in some national projects through her sorority.
Sure, sure.
And so she was very much dedicated, committed to the work of her sorority, and attended not only the local programs and projects and helped to produce them, but she also was supportive at a national level of her sorority. I think of her as a very committed friend. Once she became your friend, she was committed to you and would help you in any way that she could.
Look, I mean, I think that's a very good description. Again, I never met her, but from others. Oh, please.
But I must also say that she was a woman who gave extraordinary support to her church. She worked untiringly with her church on various committees and various central committees, of course. And so I think of her and her husband as a team in terms of professional interests, social interests, and in terms of their support to their church. I just think it was very important to say that.
Thank you, appreciate it, appreciate it. I want to sort of switch gears just a little bit. We've now established the Edrene Cole collection, and you know, we begin to populate that collection with some of the last interviews that you and Edrene and Giuseppe had conducted, and you made those available to the library. Why'd you do that?
Oh, I did that because I thought it was important for the community to have access to that work, that body of work. I wanted them to be widely accessible I mean, that's really my reason for doing it. But also, I wanted to continue her name and her posture, her stature as a Toledo, a historian of Toledo, Black Toledo. So much so that after she died, I tried to pull together a group of people together so that we could talk about how to continue her memory and her legacy in the community. I didn't have the kind of time that I would have liked to have had to dedicate to continuing that work with the community and to really building that project. And so I was delighted when you came along and you had interest, and I am very pleased that you're continuing in this vein, because I think she's somebody who is worthy of the continuing commemoration of her legacy. And I think that what she was doing was so important that it needed to be continued. I think that she began something which would have had a much broader base and much greater depth if she had had the physical energy to continue it. And so that's, I didn't know what else to do at that point except to offer those materials so that they could be used.
Well, again, let me thank you for making that decision and for entrusting me, because I feel honored, to be honest with you, to be able to continue this work. And I'm just pleased that you were able to trust me enough, and then I continue to value your consultation and your advice in terms of the direction of the collection. But let me just ask you this too. Sort of, we both talked about our interest in the goal of making sure that history is accessible to the public, to people. As an historian, why is it important to have history accessible to people?
Yeah, people often make the trite expression that you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. But I think that in many ways we should remember that we stand on the shoulders of others. And I think that if you don't find vehicles for sharing historical vignettes with school children, and that's where it has to begin. She had talked about having posts down the streets, and I can't even remember. See, I'm not from Toledo, so I can't remember all of the districts.
Certainly.
But there is an area in which she was born and reared, and she talked about having posts down the street that would have little historical markers about the Black community, and that could be a school trip for school children. That's why she made the resource book, because she was very much interested in sharing history with school children and having it grow up in them so that they could understand their connections with the past and could feel the power of that. You know, people will come into a community and they act as though, and this is where I just give you so many accolades, they act as though nothing happened before they came. That's right. And they're going to start something new. That's right. And I think that when you give school children that connection to the past through historical vignettes, they understand that, hey, it was something was going on before I came. Sure. Many things are happening. Now, I want to go back to get this piece and build on it.
Absolutely.
And so I think also that everybody should know when it's time for them to move off of a particular scene. And I recognized that whatever work or supportive work that I had to do in Toledo was ended, and that it was now time for me to be fully directed to my position as professor of history at Bowling Green, and to develop and complete some projects in which I was engaged, and to give them my full attention. And so I am just very fortunate that you are around, and I'm not trying to turn this into a Pat Willie on the back scene, but I'm really trying, I really want to acknowledge that Jasovi had moved on, Edrene, Toledo's historian, had moved on. Here I was left with a body of work, and I no longer needed to, my work there was ended, and I'm just fortunate that you were around so that I could pass that mantle, I guess.
Oh, well, thank you. And again, I do recognize my responsibility, you know, and I always acknowledge the fact that this is not new. I'm building on what someone else has started. You know, I'm standing on a lot of very broad shoulders, and I just feel both as a man of African descent and as a college-trained person that I have a responsibility and an obligation to continue what others have started, and I hope that years down the road somebody else will build on what I've started. And so I think that's what it should be about. And so again, I thank you ever so much, Dr. Eason, for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us. And I look forward to our continued relationship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And welcome again to Toledo.
What a welcome I've gotten.
That's wonderful.